Welcome to the CAD Office Training Guide series for F.Connect. I'm John Mark Palacios, CAD Applications Engineer. Today, I'll be going through the F.Connect Roadway Design 3D Modeling Guide. In this series of videos, I will take you step by step through each exercise from the guide. Today, we're going to start with the introduction and Chapter 1 of the guide, Template Design. There's going to be a separate course for template design eventually, but this chapter is designed to give us an overview of the basics. You have a basic understanding so that you can use the templates to build corridors. So what we're going to cover in this chapter is going to be the create template dialog, setting up a template library using the empty project ITL, which is delivered in the F.Connect workspace, using the template library organizer to copy things over between different template library files. We're going to name project templates, set up new templates, name them. I'm going to create a resurfacing template. So those are the exercises we'll go through. So if you want to follow along in your guide, we're going to be in chapter 1, page 1-1, and a brief introduction, which I've kind of covered already. So we're going to pretty much go straight into exercise 1.1, and that's going to be on page 1-5. You may want to take a look if you haven't done any of the 3D modeling in SS4 or SS10. You may want to take a look at it. Yeah, the training guide, there's a little bit more info on there on the basics, but we'll cover most of it, but it's just some background info, some of the tools we're using. One of the things I will say, if you have done 3D modeling in SS4 or SS10, is that the workflow for 3D modeling in this part, especially for Chapter 1, is virtually identical. There's very little difference. Once you open that Create Template dialog, that window looks just the same as it did in SS4 and SS10. The difference really is only in the ribbon in ORD, where you have all the tools are moved around, and similar tools are there, but they're just in different place instead of being in the task navigation like they were in SS4 and SS10. But if you're starting, for the first time, and that's great. Either way, we'll try to keep you up. All right, so exercise 1.1. We're going to do the create template dialog. So open, but one of the things that you need to make sure is that you use the icons as F.Connect for OpenRoads Designer, so it doesn't open just a generic OpenRoads workspace. All right, so make sure over here it's the configuration, because custom configuration says F dot. And over here, if you have your workspace loaded, or if you have your data set loaded, it will say 22049555201_CE. That's the data set for this project. So go ahead and select that. And then we want to click Browse. And this is exercise 1.1, step 1. It should take you directly into your worksets folder and into this particular workset. So just scroll to the bottom and open up the _blank file.dgn. So we want to create a new file. So to do that, we just need it open so we can access the F.ribbon. All right, so once the blank file is open, we need to go over here to the F. tab of the ribbon. It's always good to make sure by default, you'll have the active workflow right here set to OpenRoads Modeling. You can change that. There might be a couple things you need to change it for, but right now, just make sure that says OpenRoads Modeling, and then the F. tab will show up. And that's over here. It's the last one on the ribbon. So you want to click on that. And then over here, almost all the way over to the left. And now most of these ribbon tabs, it has the element selection right here on the left. And so right next to that, we have Create File. It's the first one in the actions list. So we're going to select Create File. And should be in your work set. That one's probably grayed out. And the discipline, we want to do roadway. And then you want to do roadway design files for the file group. And we're going to select the MODL RD, the 3D modeling file. And this is going to be, I'm going to call it, we're on step 3 here, so we're going to call it the MODL RD mainline 61, sorry, mainline, and then sequence, we'll do 61. And then it's Wakulla County, because it's, may already be selected, but if it's not, make sure it says Wakulla County. And we select the county, the coordinate system will be selected automatically, so it should be FL83-NF. Then you just click Create Open File. And that creates it and opens it all in one step. So up here, you can always check your name of the file. It says MODL RD mainline 61. So it opened it up. So we can close it out. So next we're going to go into the Create Template tool. So a lot of the tools we're going to be using for this course are going to be in corridors. So that's kind of in the middle of the ribbon here. Click on the Corridors tab. Then we want to go to the Create Template tool, which is this one here. One thing about the way the interface is on the ribbon, if something has a drop down, you can see if you click the arrow, this is a split button. So this is the tool. It's going to do the first tool in the list or the last one you used. So if you do the drop down, you can make sure you select the right tool. If in doubt, do the drop down. But if you're using a tool over and over again, this goes to the last one, so it just makes it easier to keep using it. So we just click this drop down here and choose Create Template. There's also a shortcut key to access this. The F12 function key should also bring this up. You like the function keys. So this workset already has an ITL file in it, but so that we can show you how you would create an ITL file, I'm going to create a new one. So this is going to be exercise 1.2. We're just going to go File, New. And New Template Library. And then we're going to do the make sure in the right project folder, go to the roadway folder. And I don't want to overwrite the one I have because this is just testing out. So I'm just going to delete the _CE and just call it this FPID number.itl. And then click Save. So then that's how you would set up a blank one. Now you can look through the rest. This is exercise 1.2. It's really an optional. If you can look through the rest, how you set up folders, but I'm going to leave that on your own exercise. We really want to go down to exercise 1.3, which is to create a default template library. So what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to do File, Open. And you want to navigate to the F.Connect workspace folder, which is where your F.Connect is installed. So usually it's the C drive and F.Connect. And then you want to go to Organization Civil, F. And down here, go to Template Library. And there's 2 ITL files in here. So we want to use the empty project ITL. Some of the things that so the civil f.ord ITL has all of our templates in there. But just to streamline the ITL for your project, we've kind of set up an empty project version, with the intent being that when you need certain components, you use a template library organizer, copy them over into your project-specific ITL file. So we're going to select the empty project ITL, and we're just going to click Open down here. And so we've opened that, and we want to make this project specific. So all we do is go to the File menu over here and do Save As. And now we navigate back to our Worksets folder. That's usually C Worksets. We go into this Workset folder in the Roadway folder, and I'm just going to select this. So you want to name it the one where if you name it the same as the Workset, it'll open automatically. In this case, like I said, I don't want to overwrite this one, so I'm just going to name it the same as the one that blank one I just created. I'm just going to overwrite that one. And then I'm going to click Save. It already exists. That's just the blank one, so we can replace it. It's no problem. If you overwrite the wrong one, you might just have to copy it in later from the dataset zip file. So here's our blank one. We've got the FDOT's template selected, and there's a few folders over here. So we're going to go on to exercise 1.4. And this is covering using the template library organizer. And so we've seen the new open. That's really the only command you have here. But we want to be able to get templates from that civil f.ord ITL into this one. So to do that, we go here to the Tools menu. And then we just select Template Library Organizers, first one in the list. And so this will open up over here. It's going to be the ITL, the current ITL file. And I don't know why the name's not showing up here. It really should be, but it's not a big deal. This left side is going to be the current ITL. And then by default, this is the active design file. So this will be useful if you need to, you've edited a template drop in your file instead of editing it in the template library. That's this command over here, the edit template drop, which you can do, but you have to be careful with it because the usual workflow is you edit it in this ITL file and then you synchronize it to the design file because it does store it whenever you create a corridor using a template here. It will store it in the active design file. So I haven't created anything, so there's nothing in here yet. But you can also use a template library organizer if you've edited in the active design file and you want to put it back in your ITL. You can do that. There's a separate command to synchronize the template over here. It's lightning bolt under miscellaneous. So that'll go the other way. If you edit in the template library, after you've already applied it, you synchronize it, and it'll update the changes in your design file. Caveat being, if you synchronize it, having made changes in the design file, it will override it. It'll give you a warning about that too. That's when you might want to use template library organizer to correct that. But in this case, we're just trying to bring in some new ones from a different ITL file. So you go to these three dots over here beside the second column. And then we're going to look for the civil f.ord ITL. This is again going to be in the C f.connect folder, wherever your f.connect installation is located. So f.connect, organization civil, f.template library. And we're on step 3 right now of this exercise, 1.4. This is page 1-8. The civil f.ord ITL is what you want to select, and then just click open. So now over here, this is changed to the path. So this is the civil f.ord ITL file. A little bigger so you can see the whole thing. So we just want to copy a few things over here. Going down to step 5. We want to get from the examples for training the design and 3D modeling course guide templates. We want to get some of these pulled over. Some of them may already be in there, but we'll just copy them over and you see what happens if we copy over more than one. All right, so we have the step says use the inside median curve. We can just copy that over. And you can see it depends on number 1 because that one was already over there. And just make sure, just gonna scroll up here, make sure we have all the ones that we need. Looks like we do for this training course. And again, I already have that ITL created for you that has everything in there. So don't worry too much about this. We'll just switch to using that for the next chapter. The next couple steps, step 8, there's a few other things it says to bring over. So we can just look through that and see if there's anything else we need. So we need the in conditions, the entire parts folder. I'm going to drag that over. If you drag the folder, you can see it comes in there now. And you just drag it to wherever. You drop it inside another folder. Just make sure it gets highlighted when you do that. And we need also, this is a table under step 8 that I'm going through. We need also the resurfacing components. So if we go under components, pavement, resurfacing. So there's nothing in here right now, the blank one. So we'll just copy that one over, drop it in there. Now we got something in there. And also we need the curb and gutter components. So I'm going to grab this folder and also drop it in the components folder. And we need the linear templates common. The outside lane with paved shoulder to linear templates. So this one here. It looks like that one is already there. I'll just bring it in again. This can get a little bit messy if you hover over too many folders, and sometimes you might have to go collapse them again to find it. So it expanded everything out because I dragged it. As soon as you drag it over top of it, you don't even have to hover. You just accidentally drag it over top of it. It just expands it all. So you just double click on these, it'll shrink them back down. All right, so linear templates common. We also need the outside line with type F curb. This one. And then we need, under surface templates, we need to make sure we have pavement asphalt in here. And then we're going to click OK. So at this point, do be aware it's going to ask you to save it for making all those, copying all these things over. So just go ahead and save it. All right. So that brings us to exercise 1.5. All right, so we're going to exercise 1.5. We're here on page 1-11. So what we're going to do is just copy one of the templates, one of the typical sections of the FDM templates. Let's do 306-05. So if you select it over here, then you right-click and choose Copy. And we want to go here to our Corridor Templates folder. These are mostly the project-specific ones. So I'm going to right-click on that folder and choose Paste. And if I double-click on it, now it's got something in there. I'm going to shrink down the FDM templates. So I want to right-click on the one I just pasted in there, and now I want to select Rename. So now this becomes editable. This is much like you'd rename something in Windows Explorer. So we're going to call it SR61 training. This is step 3. and I hit enter. So if I double click on this, it makes it active. You can also right click here and do set active. That'll do the same thing. And it changes over here. Down over here is your preview for the active template. So I can, this preview here. So this little red box here, you probably can't see it because it's pretty small even on my screen. There's a little red box showing you which one is active. But your main indicator is over here. So I may select a different one down here, and it'll preview it down here. The biggest thing is when you're making a copy of one that looks very similar, you can run into trouble with that. For example, if I have probably a couple similar looking ones like these two. So I have two, curb and curb one. So if I select this one, you just got to be aware which one you're editing. So up here, current template. This is your active one. So even though I may have selected a different one here, you're editing the active template. Make any edits here. So you can check your name up here of the current template. Check for the red box over here, just to make sure you're editing the right template. So we're going back here. I'm in the SR61 training active. And now the next step, I just want to do a file menu and choose save. And now we're going to go to exercise 1.6. To create a resurfacing template. So we're going over here to quarter templates. If I do right click and do new template, it's going to create a nice blank one for us. And I mean, you can do in step 2, it says shows you how to rename it. We already did that. So if you notice here, it just goes straight into editing. So you can just type the name. So I'm going to call it RR98 _ training. And I just hit enter. So double click on that, make sure it's active, or right click and do set active. Okay, so we want to, one thing we want to do, so we do have some preferences to do prefixes and everything, so you can drag pieces of templates in here. But for our naming convention, for example, let me switch to this one. We have these points over here. These are LT _ for the left side of the center line, RT _ for the right side. Well, it'll do that for you if you drag in one of the generic components. So let's say I've got one of these that's just a piece, curb type F, for example. This doesn't have that LT or RT. When we drag it in, we can determine what side it goes on. But it's helpful if it'll rename it for us too. So I want to go here to Tools. So we find the Template Library Organizer, but go down to the next to the last one in the menu, Options. And you want to go over here, right under the OK and Cancel buttons, click on Preferences. And in that list, select FDOT. And so make sure that's highlighted, and then come over here and click Load over on the right side. And down here, you notice it says Preference FDOT Loaded. So I can close out. So what it did for us here, so we have a component seed name from the feature definition and the prefixes, so the LT _ and the RT _. And this apply affixes is checked. So this preference will automatically apply depending on what side of the center line you're dragging something into. And you can customize things further in here, but this is the kind of the default one that we use most of the time. All right, so this looks good. I'm going to click OK on the template options, and then I'm going to go on to step 3. So that's going to be we're looking for the Tools menu again. We're going to Dynamic Settings, so last one on the menu. So here we want to change, let's change this feature definition here to template miscellaneous. So most of the feature definitions, it's only picked this crossover temporary because it's just the first one in the list of all our feature definitions. But for template design, most of what you're going to need needs to be under template points. Make sure it matches our QC. So go under linear, then under roadway design, and then under template points. And there's all the ones that say underscore PM. Those are the proposed PM and this proposed model. So we want to go to template miscellaneous underscore PM. Select that option. And then let's uncheck the apply fixes. So these are the fixes, the LT and RT that we just set up. Just right now, we're not going to use it, but it's set up in the preferences. So whenever we need it, we just come back here and turn it back on. You can actually leave this open if you want to refer to it. You know, if you want to be able to toggle that on and off easy, might make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go over here to components, resurfacing, the milling and overlay. We're going to overlay, and I'm going to select the pavement overlay right component. And I'm just going to drag it from this preview window down here. So this green box is around where it's going to be inserted in here. So I'm just going to drag it and I'm going to drop it in right there on the center line. Well, I call it center line, but it's this purple box. There's no points or anything in there, so it's not necessarily the center line at this point in time. All right, so that one's already set up for pavement overlay right. So these are actually set up with the RT, so that's why we didn't want the apply fixes. It would be redundant. And we're going to bring in now we're going to bring in the pavement overlay left. And we're going to drop it in the same thing. Make sure that the little plus for the point, it will turn white. So that means it's snapping to that other point essentially. So it didn't create an extra point and actually just merged those together. And you can fit view. This is similar to the way ORD works, and you have some of the view controls down here. So a little mountain looking icon will fit view. It's some of your view controls are down here on the left, so it's kind of it's kind of its own thing. All right, so we fit that view. There's our pavement. That brings us down to end of step 4. So now we need the resurfacing. This is the overlay component. So we're going to go to the milling component. Sorry. So I'm going to drag in the pavement milling right, and it's going to snap to the pavement overlay underscore bottom in. Let it turn white again there. And do the same thing for the left side. Drag this here from the preview, snap it to that white point. And now we also want the pavement overbuild. So we'll go in here into overbuild, over here in components. And this one is going to snap to the same point, actually. So the pavement overbuild right is going to snap to pavement overlay bottom in here. You can also drag it from here. You don't always have to drag it from the preview. Just be aware of what's selected here, because wherever this box is selected, so I can change it if I want to insert it somewhere else. By default, it will be the insertion point, the same as if you open the template where this purple is. That's our template origin. By default, it's going to be that. So I'm just dragging it from over here, pavement overbuild left, and then snapping it to that center. All right, so I still have my dynamic settings open. So it's going to be step 9 on the page 1-18, top of that page. So now I want to check this box to apply fixes. And we need For step 10, we need linear templates common, outside lane with paved shoulder. So this one right here. So, take this slow. So what you want to do is you start dragging it. Don't let go of it yet. Right click. Now once you right click, then you can let go of the left mouse button. It's not going to do anything yet. Then you do mirror. So check that from the menu. So now it's putting it on both sides. And now what I want to do is snap it to this outside point, the right pavement overlay _out. Make sure that turns white there, and it merges in. So now it has. I'm going to fit view again. All right, so now we want to change that widening width. So there's kind of two ways to do this. I mean, you can edit a point. So the right pavement EOP _out. And this constraint on the horizontal constraint from pavement overlay out, that's this point here. So that's my lane width essentially. So let's change that to 1. Well, this isn't really a lane. I'm just really widening. It's going to vary because I have a feature constraint over here. So I'm going to set this slope to -2%. This is normal lane. And then I'm going to click apply. You got to be careful when you're editing the point properties. Don't click up close without hitting apply, or it will not save any of your changes. So if I hit apply, you can see it right away. It made the change. I can click close. So another way I wanted to show you here. If I go over here under active template, and if I go under parametric constraints, because this thing had a label on there, I can make the changes there. Makes it a little bit quicker. This point here, so that EOP _slope out, and it should be the same on the other side. So if I come over here, EOP slope out, when you select the point constraint or the parametric constraint, it'll tell you what it's referring to. So this one's actually negative EOP _slope out for the left side. So that's fine. I'm just going to double click on that parametric constraint and just change it right there. If you have anything that has the same parametric constraint, this will make it easier because then you can make the edit for multiple points at once. So that's 2%. And then I have I'm just going to go back here and double click on the point to make the edit for the slope. So that should be -1. So the convention with left and right is positive and negative. So positive is to the right of the center line, or sorry, not the center line, the template origin. So that template origin is 0. X and Y values is 0. So this is like it's a graph essentially. So when it's -1, it's just to the left of that origin by 1 foot. I'm going to apply that. Well, actually, not to the origin, but it's in the left direction of that origin. So it's to the left, 1 foot to the left of this parent point, the constraint. Apply that, close it. That finishes step 11 and 12. We just need some end conditions in here, for the slope to tie down. So just since I hadn't covered this yet, and I dove right in, but just so you're familiar with how this is going to work to build a corridor, essentially we're taking this. It's like a typical section really, and it's gonna put it in a corridor like it's like a cross section. It's going to use it, repeat it over a set interval to build a 3D model. close some of these out so I can see what I'm doing here without being as cluttered. All right, so you basically want your full typical section in here, and then you can apply it. And you can change it. You can change up the templates wherever you need to. Let's see, so we have the in condition, and we need the parts, and the 6:1 cut, and the 6:1 fill, each of these. So if I drag it in here, over to the right side, mirror is still selected. All right, right click before and selected it. It's still selected. And if you uncheck it, you can just go check it back. So just snap it over here to this outside point, which is the right UP shoulder underscore out. Make sure apply fixes is still turned on. We want those on. So it'll name it here. So we have right 6:1 cut. And this is left 6:1 cut. That's good. So we need to fill 6:1, fill to 5 feet. So I'm just going to drag that in over to the right side. Same point. Snap it to there. All right, so we've got cut and fill options. Let me just get the view so it looks a little better. And I'm just going to come over here and do File Save. Save my changes. All right, so we're going to exercise 1.7 on page 1-20 to edit templates. So I still have this template open here. Just make sure over here display point names is checked. If it's off, it'll be much cleaner view. But if you want to see what each point is named, sometimes you have to zoom in to see it better without too much clutter. I want to check that on. So we'll turn that on so we can see which point we're looking for. So we want to go to the RT6:1 cut point, which is going to be up here. This in condition that we put in. So double click on it to edit it. This here where we clicked. In case that wasn't clear. The one thing we want to check, this is step 2. Check the in condition is infinite box. So what this does, an in condition will only look from here to wherever this is constrained if you don't have it checked. By checking in condition infinite, it'll keep looking until it finds. So the in condition is typically looking for a surface. In this case, it's what it's looking for, existing ground surface. So by setting it to infinite, we don't have to worry about whether it's constrained within the limits. But there might be a few situations where you don't want it infinite. So you want to say, well, if you can't find it within that range, let's go to a different in condition, like this one, or you might have different slopes. So there might be reasons for it, but in this case, we're doing in condition is infinite, and then we're going to change this constraint on the horizontal. Set to 30, because it's infinite. We can shorten it up. So we're just going to change the horizontal down to 5 feet. Click apply. Nice and short. So I could close after hitting apply, but I could also do next. And this will usually take, I think it's the order that you put these in. So the RT6:1 fill, that's step 3. We need to make the same changes basically. So horizontal is going to be 5, and in condition is going to be infinite. Click apply, then hit next. Okay, now I'm over on the left side. So my in condition is going to be infinite, and now it's going to be, the horizontal is going to be -5. Click apply, click next, and -5 over here. Oh, and my in condition is infinite. Forget that. Click apply and close. Now I can fit. I can see it a little bit easier to see now. Not as long.
2, 1.
All right, so now we need to change the fill components. So if you if you double click on the points, it'll edit the points. If you double click on these lines or these shapes, these are the components, but usually it's the lines. You can't click on the fill on the side. You have to click on the line on the outside of a shape or just this line here. So if I double click on it, it'll open the edit. I can also right click on it and choose edit component. But it seems like double clicking is quicker, so kind of second nature for me to double click. All right, so we're on step 5 here. We're changing the priority value. So we change this to 2. So what this is doing is this in condition, when there's 2 of them, you gotta, if you don't have different priorities, it's actually going to create a conflict because it doesn't know which one to do. So by setting this to 2 and this cut is set to 1, the fill is going to set to 2. It's going to try the number 1 first. So it'll try doing that cut, and then because it's infinite, it'll just draw this line until, it'll say look as far out on this at this slope, and if you don't find the existing surface, well, I'm giving up. That end condition was not fulfilled. So now you're going to try the second priority, which is the fill. So this is just which order it's going to do it in. So if one doesn't do it, if one doesn't resolve, the other one will. But you don't want them. Generally, you do not want them to be the same priority. I think we're probably going to make the same change on the other one here. So I'm going to click next and let's see if I can get to the left fill. So if you click next twice, it looks like it's bringing up to the left 1 to 6 fill, and it does make it kind of bold in this window. So that may help you try to figure out which one is selected. But you can also see the name is LT 1 to 6 fill, and that one also needs a priority 2 as well. So these can be the same as the other side. It's just this is kind of a branch. So coming from this. It's building the template, it comes to this point and says, okay, I got 2 end conditions. Let me do the first priority. And if I can't do that, I'm going to do the second priority. So I applied that change. I'm going to close it out. And we can move on to step 6. This middle point, the PVT EOP in. Let's double click on this. I'm going to turn off this horizontal feature constraint and click apply. So the horizontal feature constraint will actually, it'll look for a feature definition in your 2D file within the range that's defined here. So you can adjust adjust the widths and things like that. So in this case, we just want this to follow the alignment that we put in, which is, I believe, the center line of the roadway. So we are turning the constraints off. Because this is the origin point, it doesn't have any other constraint, doesn't need any other constraints. All right, so I'm going to just do file save my changes. And I'm going to switch over here to active template just so I can change some properties kind of in bulk. So if I go to the parametric constraints folder, if I go to this overlay PVT thick, double click on that. We want to change the default value from -0.25 to -2/12. So if you're trying to do in inches, you can just do this, and if you hit tab, it'll do the math for you. And then so it's -0.17 is what it shows. Now it does store all the extra decimals. It just doesn't show them. That's why it's a little better to do it that way, so it'll be a little more precise than if you actually type in 0.17. And then we want to do the same thing for the overlay pave thickness LT and overlay pave thickness RT. So this is -2 or 12. And I'm just hitting enter, so it'll go straight to select the OK button. All right, so that's step 2 and 3 there. Now we're going on to the change the milling point properties. So we zoom into the right widening side. So that's this over here. And we are going to edit the right pavement overlay out, which is this point right here. It's on so I think the convention, it's not hard and fast. You don't have to follow this, but I think the convention a lot of our templates use is it's in towards the inside, out towards the outside of the roadway. So this is the outside point of this component. This is why it's the pavement overlay out. This is the pavement overlay component. This is the widening component. In this point, because it was merged, the widening component it doesn't exist anymore because it's merged to this point. All right, so we're editing that point. We want to change the constraint on the horizontal to 5 feet. And then this constraint here, we're going to change. So it's set to a slope. It's going to depend on your project, how you need your milling resurfacing to behave. So in this case, we're actually just going to do a projected surface. So instead of saying it's just a 2% slope, it's just basically matching existing here. Changing the projected surface. Just looking at the picture to make sure everything's right. So the value here, we need to select active. So this will be the active surface. And then click apply. Oops. We lost my horizontal settings. Change that and click apply. Okay, it looks right now. And I can close it. And we're going to do the same thing for the left pavement overlay out point over here on the left side. Double clicking on that. Okay, so I'm checking the horizontal value. Projected surface looks good. Horizontal value needs to be -7. I'm going to change that and click apply. You see it move over here. So I can close it. Looks good. I'm going to fit to view. You see the whole thing. I'm going to come over here and do file save. Don't lose any of my changes. All right, so now we need to do the right pavement EOP out. That's this point over here. I'm going to double click to edit that. Horizontal is going to go, I'm going to change it to 1 to 0.01. Now essentially what we're trying to do here is basically the widening can go from 0 to nothing, but if you do 0, it'll stack the point on top of it. So let me just show you if I do 0. Now I got 2 points stacked on top of each other, and you can see those names run together. Well, it's hard to differentiate, so it's a little easier to work with just to have that 100th in there, and it's not going to make a huge difference. So now I can see there's 2 separate points there, and I can double click on whichever one I need if I zoom in. So it's just make it easier to work with that way. So I'm going to do horizontal feature constraint. This should be pavement asphalt EOPA. So most of the horizontal feature constraints are in the plan profile 2D lines because you're constraining it to a 2D feature. I'm just looking at this box to make sure we got the right settings here. And the range, we want it to be 100 feet. I'm going to click apply. That looks right. Close that. And then I'm going to come over to the left side and do something similar for that. Double click the LTPVT EOP underscore out. This value is going to go from -1 to 0.01. Sorry, to -0.01. Gotta keep that negative in there. And the horizontal constraint, we're going to set that to 100. I'm also going to make sure this is the right constraint. Pavement asphalt UPA. It's under the linear roadway design plan profile 2D lines pavement asphalt UPA. But don't worry too much about getting exactly, because we're not really going to use this file for the remaining exercises. Can't break anything at this point. All right, so that's set. Let me apply in case I didn't hit it. Close that. I'll fit the view, see if it looks good. And then I'm going to do file save. Let's take a look at these milling components. So the milling components, so there's different kind of components on this. You have the kind of this closed shape. You have the end condition components, which are just a line usually, but there might be more than one. You have the regular component like this. And then you have the milling component. So if I double click on it, since there's three on top of each other here, it'll ask me, well, which one do you want to edit? I want to edit RT PVT milling. So this looks like a regular line, but it's not. This is an overlay and stripping component. So these are designed specifically for milling and resurfacing. So we're going to just make sure the settings are right here. So the bottom needs to be follow component. It looks like it already is. And the top needs to be follow surface. Then if you notice here, this is set to the active surface. So this is good to go. But it's just worth checking the settings. Make sure. So what this is going to do is that you're going to mill from the existing surface down to however we define this component, which is right now is constrained. So this is projected surface. This is based on a profile, which could be existing profile or could be proposed profile. And it's going to come down at a fixed milling depth here. So it's fixed milling depth. So it's a fixed depth down from this point, which is from the existing ground, and it's fixed depth down here from this point, which we don't know at this point whether it's existing ground or profile. And it could be either way. You could, depending on what we need. Let's see here. So I'm just going to click apply on that. I don't think I made any changes. And you notice the checkbox here, check for stripping component, which makes sense because this is for milling, we're actually stripping material out. So it's accurate to call it that. Better to call it that. So I'm going to edit the left one too. Double click on this and select the middle one. So it's LT PVT milling. Just make sure it looks right. So it's top is following surface, bottom is following component, surface is active. Looks good. So let's say we want a slope break here in the milling. So what I can do is right click on here. And in about the middle of this menu, there's an option for inserting a point. So I right clicked on the line right here, so you can insert a point anywhere. Well, I was inserting it right where I right clicked actually. So I'm going to just store it in here. And don't worry about snapping exactly because this is set to point. Because this step is set to 0.1, so it's still jumping by 1/10 of a foot. So don't worry about that. I'm just going to right click there after I left click to insert it, and then I right click and choose finish. We're going to constrain it, so it doesn't matter how it is right now. So I'm going to call this the RT ML break, and I'm going to set this to pavement crown _ PM. And then the constraints should be horizontal, and the projected surface. So the parent one is going to PVT EOPN. Projected surface in any direction, and we set that to active. The value for the horizontal needs to be 0.1. And I'm going to click apply. Now, this looks a little bit ugly. Like I said, because we did the projected surface, it is just keeping the same location. And unfortunately, you can't actually move it. Can do is move this point. I'll move that down there. So the green one is the only one that's not constrained, so I can move it. If it's fully constrained, I don't have an option if I right-click to move the point. So the only thing about moving this point is now it's not on my origin, so it won't follow the profile. So imagine this is your centerline profile, this purple square. So I can right-click on this green point and do change template origin. We're deviating a little bit from the exercises here, but I just wanted to clean that up for you. All right, so, and that puts it back on 0 and 0. All right, so now we want to put points on the bottom of the pavement overlay, pavement milling, and pavement overbuild components. So it's going to do right click here, do insert point. It's going to ask me, well, where do I want to put the component? Let's do the overlay first. I'm gonna decrease this step 0.01 from 0.10 because that's the reason. This is in the dynamic settings. That's the reason it's being a little finicky. Now I can keep it looking a little bit better. So I right click there and do finish. I'll go ahead and add all three right now. So I'll do insert point again. Let me do it. So I did it on the overlay first. So let me do it on the milling. Just zoom way in so I can put these a little separate from each other. And I'm going to finish. Then I'm going to do one more on the overbuild. I'll put that one. Put it right in the middle between the two. Do finish. All right, so I can see my 3 points separately. So we need to set the point properties. So the first one that's shown in step 6 here, page 1-32, is the looks like milling line. So I'm gonna edit this one. So this should be the RT and ML break bottom. And we're going to set this constraint to horizontal. And then if you click the little target looking icon right beside the parent over here, so you can select from the drop down, but well, I don't know what I called it. So if I click the target, I can select it graphically, and it's going to be the RT ML break, the other one we selected over here. And that's so it's constraining to that. So set that value to 0. And then there's a vertical constraint. I think it's constrained to the same thing, the RTML break. And that's going to be, so we should have the overlay pavement thickness, right? We already set this one, but I don't necessarily trust this. That is pretty much what it rounds to, but if you want to be more precise, you can type it in, which is -2/12. Again, it doesn't look like it makes a difference, but it will. So if you watch what it does here when I click apply, see it bumps it up. So it's exactly 2 inches, I guess, below that. Okay, so that one looks good. I'm just going to close that. So basically we need to constrain the other ones in the same way. So there's a couple ways you can do it. One of them, rather than editing the same way, I'm just going to go over here. If I right click on one of the other ones, and I'm going to do add constraint and choose full constraint. And if you look down here, there's a prompt that says select parent point down here at the bottom left of the window. The DB, that's the data button, I think. Select parent point, RST, exit. So the parent point is going to be this RTML break. So it's just putting the constraints in without doing that extra work. So I'm just going to set the horizontal to 0 and the vertical to, I'm typing in at -2/12, just like I did before. Let it round. That's weird. I'm going to edit it because that doesn't look quite right. Yeah, it does. And actually the name doesn't matter for this because we're going to merge them into one. But this should be, let me just check my constraints. Okay, that's what happened. This horizontal constraint was supposed to be 0. So it should be right on top of each other. There we go. Now these 2 points are right on top of each other. So the only thing, since we're just trying to merge this, this is not constrained. I'm just going to do a move point over here. And if I snap to there, it turns white. So if I right click on this, I have an option to merge points right about the middle. So I want to actually going to have to do this twice. So first I'm going to delete. So I want to keep the RTML break bottom. So just delete one of these others, RT underscore. And then it says merge it with point. Well, I'm merging it with the ML break bottom. And that only comes up because there's 3 selections there. If I do this again, right click, merge points. I want to delete the RT underscore 2 now. And it didn't ask me the other thing because there's only 1 point to merge it with. So now all of these are 1 point. So everything's moving with it. The command I just used as a test point controls. If you right click, it's down here next to the last. And I'm just doing test all. So you can move it around and just to see how it behaves. And if there's another point, you'll see it behind there and that sort of thing. So I'm going to save these changes to file save. I think that wraps it up for chapter 1. Let me fit this view and then do file save. It looks a little cleaner when I open it.